Hey guys, Rich here, and today we're going to do a shootout between 5 different ways that people commonly use to tie down airplanes. We've got 3 airplane-specific tie-downs and the spiral stakes people use for dogs as well as earth anchors. I was filming this at our farm in Wisconsin, so the soil is very similar to what you'll have at Oshkosh during AirVenture. With several of the systems, I had a hard time getting them into the ground, not because of rocks or other impediments, but just due to the firmness of the soil due to having a good amount of moisture in it. We'll start with a non-aviation solution. Even though EAA doesn't recommend it, sometimes you'll see people using spiral dog tie-downs on airplanes. These aren't great for a few reasons. 1, the build quality is highly variable. 2, when they snap off, they leave metal in the ground that's difficult to recover. And 3, they're really difficult to install correctly. In particular, I ran into problem 3 with our test. Because the soil is so firm here, it was really difficult to get the dog spiral to bite into the soil to be screwed in properly. I ended up having to step on it with my shoe, and then use one of the other tie-downs to get enough force on it to screw it in. In any case, I finally got it screwed in and was able to pull on it along its longitudinal axis. You can see here that with less than 70 pounds of force applied to the top, the attachment is already starting to bend open. That's about the same amount of force as having another 10 gallons of fuel in your wing, so not a lot in terms of keeping the plane safe. However, despite that early concern, it did ultimately hold 249 pounds before failing by being pulled out of the dirt. This was the weakest performer in our test, but held better than I expected. Next, we tested the Smart Anchor system. Like fly ties, this system uses stakes at different angles to grab a large soil profile. The two systems are similar in that regard and simply stake in opposite directions from one another, so my expectation is that they would perform similarly. I've been using screw-in stakes for my white duck tent lately, and decided to try that out on these two tie-down systems and see if the screws were any stronger or weaker than stakes. I was pretty surprised by the results, if I'm being honest. I've sped up the video here to prevent boredom, but the screws took 20 to 40% less time to install in this soil. It's worth noting again that this soil is pretty ideal for stakes, and that anything more rocky or harder would stack the deck strongly in favor of screws. This system is designed for a completely vertical pull, so we hooked it up to the loader on the tractor and pulled it straight up. Using the screws, the system pulled out at almost 700 pounds of force. Since I'm making this video for AirVenture, I wanted to share something pretty cool. Our sponsor, Plane Perfect, has a deal worked out with the EAA this year to save you from having to bring your own cleaning products, but still look your best on the flight line. So many people want to show off their plane, but by the time tents, sleeping bags, air mattresses, battery chargers, snacks, chairs, coolers, and your families are loaded up, there's no useful load left for cleaning supplies. So this year, in every merch tent, you'll be able to buy a quick detail kit that includes wing wipe to clean the bugs you picked up over rip-on off the leading edges, eyes outside for your windows, 2 microfiber towels, and, my favorite part, a portion of every sale goes to support young eagles. So check them out at the show. Make your plane look its best and support a great program that has put a lot of young people into airplanes for the first time. Okay, so we got 700 pounds using screws in the Smart Anchor system. Let's see what happens using the stakes that came with it. I was absolutely astonished to see it only pull 380 pounds in this configuration. Is it possible that the screws make that big of a difference? When pounding in the stakes, it is very difficult to nail them in completely straight. So maybe the soil is more disturbed than with the screws? That was my theory anyway. We'll go straight to the fly ties next since they're such a similar design. And again, we're going to do 2 tests. One with screws, one with stakes. This time we'll start with the stakes. And this shot shows a lot of earth being moved as the force is applied. This is the key to keeping the plane on the ground. The stakes in the Smart Anchors gave up at 380 pounds. And now we're using them in fly ties and we get an 866 pound pull. Way more than double. So maybe it's not the stakes that made the difference? Switching to screws, it failed so quickly that I barely have time to talk about it. It failed at 233 pounds, which is less than even the dog screw. All of these tests took place in an area no more than 10 meters square, so the variability in the test is shocking. And if people have ideas on how to achieve more consistent results, put them in the comments below. I'm game to try some new ideas in the future. EAA 444 sent me this system to test, and they sell them at AirVenture every year. We'll test them in a minute, but for now, I'll share that I like the approach a lot. It's a single long stake, so not great in sand or rocky soil, but for dirt like my field and Oshkosh, they're easy enough to install and are the only system we're testing today that demands force be applied at an angle. Their included flyer is easy to understand, including a couple diagrams of useful knots for tying down. There's something interesting to note here. In the previous tests, The amount of movement was pretty small before a total failure. On the other hand, this system moves quite a bit while absorbing more and more load before finally failing. I'm not sure what to make of that. Maybe it means you're safer longer and get a chance to replace the tie-downs or otherwise compensate for the weather before a complete failure? As before, if people have ideas about this, I welcome input below. Okay, so those are the portable systems for today. I'm going to switch next to earth anchors, which I've seen described as semi-permanent. It would take a great deal of effort to make them suitable for air venture, because you would have to have a way to pull them out of the ground or somehow dig them up and still leave your camping spot better than one you got there. But for those of us who need a more permanent solution, I wanted to include it as an option because I've never seen any other pilots try to quantify this. Spoiler alert, this is by far the strongest of the ones tested. Installation is conceptually very simple. There is an aluminum toggle on the end of a steel cable that's driven into the ground with an included tool. I say it's conceptually easy because you do need to drive it in quite a distance, and as I've mentioned several times, the soil is pretty good, which means that driving things into it takes some power. When I installed them permanently as my tie-downs at the farm, I dug up a small sledgehammer and it worked much better. In this test, I'm using a maul, which is definitely not optimal. Once pounded in, you pull the driver out of the ground, thread it through the loop at the end of the steel cable, and yank on it. This causes the aluminum toggle to rotate 90 degrees in the earth and strongly lock into the soil. As with the EAA setup, it took a couple tries to get things set up for a correct pull. You'll see that during the first applications of force, the anchor continues to pull up a little bit before becoming more firmly locked in the soil profile. We were able to put 1,190 pounds on it before reaching failure. Almost 40% better than the next best system, and with an approach that suggests there will be much less variability between installations. If you look closely at the ground, you'll see why. This little system displaces a ton of soil in a cone as it gets pulled through the earth. This is also among the smallest of the earth anchors they sell, so if you have a bigger plane or simply want to be more careful, you can get larger sizes that will definitely hold way more. So that's it for today. I have several more videos coming soon, including one where a single fly tries its best to kill me, and that's not nearly as much of a clickbait as you might expect on YouTube. And we go hunting for and finding sunken ships in Lake Michigan. So click subscribe to be alerted for those, and I've got about 100 other videos already published, so click around and I'm sure you'll find some stuff that you'll like.